Scientists, what's the most alien-like thing we've discovered on Earth? Story 1, mushrooms, or more specifically mycelium, are one of the most genuinely alien things on Earth once you start understanding how they work. They're not plants, not animals, and they operate in ways that feel completely outside the categories most people grow up with. What we call a mushroom is usually just the fruiting body. The real organism is the vast underground network of thread-like filaments called mycelium. That network can spread for miles, linking roots, soil, decaying matter, and entire ecosystems together. In forests, mycorrhizal fungi form relationships with trees, helping move water and nutrients through the ground. Some research suggests these networks can influence how resources are distributed, especially between connected plants under stress. That's why people sometimes describe it as the wood wide web. What feels alien is how decentralized it is. There's no brain, no central command, yet the system adapts, roots around obstacles, responds to chemicals, and optimizes growth patterns in ways that can look intelligent. It solves problems without thinking the way animals think. It's more like a living network than an individual creature. Some fungi can digest rock, survive radiation, infect insects and control behavior, or lie dormant for long periods waiting for the right conditions. Others can fuse with nearby colonies or compete chemically with rivals underground. It challenges the way people imagine life. We tend to think of intelligence as brains, movement, eyes, and obvious behavior. Mycelium does none of that, yet it can shape whole ecosystems from beneath our feet. If an explorer found something like it on another planet, people would absolutely call it alien. Story 2. Octopuses feel like something evolution invented while experimenting. Almost everything about them seems to ignore the usual rules people expect from animals. They have 8 flexible arms covered in suckers, no bones, and bodies soft enough to squeeze through tiny openings as long as their beak can fit. Watching one move through coral or slip into a crack in the rocks feels less like seeing an Earth animal and more like watching a shapeshifter. Their intelligence makes them even stranger. Octopuses can solve puzzles, unscrew lids, escape tanks, recognize patterns, and remember solutions. Some have been observed using tools like shells or coconut halves for shelter. But what really separates them from familiar intelligent animals is how their nervous system works. A huge portion of their neurons are located in their arms, meaning each arm can process information and act semi-independently. It's almost like they have a central brain plus 8 smaller problem-solving appendages. Then there's biology. They have 3 hearts, blue blood based on copper-rich hemocyanin instead of iron-based hemoglobin, and the ability to instantly change both color and skin texture for camouflage. Some species can mimic other animals entirely. Lose an arm, they can regrow it. Threatened, they can release ink and vanish. Their eyes are also remarkable. They evolved separately from vertebrate eyes, yet ended up highly advanced. A classic case of convergent evolution. Nature reached a similar solution through a completely different path. What makes octopuses feel alien isn't just that they're weird, it's that they became smart, adaptable, and highly capable using a blueprint so different from ours. They're a reminder that intelligence doesn't have to look human to be real. Story 3. You could point to bizarre super heavy elements or exotic radioactive atoms. But helium hydride is one of the strangest things we've ever identified because it feels like chemistry from another universe. Helium hydride ion is made from helium, the famously unreactive noble gas, bonded in a simple form with hydrogen. Just hearing helium compound already sounds wrong to most people. Helium is known for not wanting to react with anything. It has a full outer electron shell, which makes it chemically stubborn. That's why we use it in balloons, cooling systems, and environments where we don't want reactions happening. So, the idea that helium could form a molecular species at all seems almost contradictory. Yet under the right conditions, it can. What makes helium hydride even more incredible is that scientists think it was likely the first molecule to ever form in the universe after the Big Bang, when the cosmos cooled enough for atoms to begin combining. Before water, before oxygen chemistry, before carbon compounds, there may have been this tiny, odd ion drifting through the newborn universe. For decades, it was predicted theoretically, but hard to detect in space. Then, astronomers finally found evidence of it in planetary nebulae, confirming something first imagined from models of the early universe. So, while octopuses feel biologically alien, helium hydride feels cosmically alien. It's a relic from a time when the universe was brand new, built from elements behaving in ways that seem counterintuitive to life on Earth. It's not just weird, it's ancient weirdness left over from the birth of everything. Story 4. Squid and cuttlefish feel like creatures designed by a civilization with much better camouflage technology than us. One moment they're plain, the next they flash patterns, ripple colors across their skin, or disappear into the background almost instantly. It doesn't look like normal animal behavior, it looks like active camouflage software running on living tissue. What makes this possible are specialized skin cells called chromatophores, along with deeper reflective cells that manipulate light. By expanding or contracting these pigment sacs through muscular control, squid and cuttlefish can create rapid color changes, moving waves, fake shadows, warning displays, or near-perfect blending with sand, coral, or rock. Some species can switch in fractions of a second. The strangest part is that cuttlefish are colorblind, or at least don't perceive color the way humans do, yet they still perform astonishingly accurate color camouflage. They seem to use brightness, contrast, polarization of light, and environmental cues, rather than seeing color the way we imagine. That makes it even more alien, an animal matching colors without experiencing color like we do. They also use these displays as language. Patterns can signal aggression, courtship, confusion, or territorial claims. Their skin becomes both an invisibility cloak and a communication screen at the same time. Then add everything else: advanced eyes, high intelligence, soft bodies, rapid movement through jet propulsion, and problem-solving skills common in cephalopods. They're already strange before the living light show begins. What makes squid and cuttlefish feel so alien is that they don't just have color, they control it dynamically. Most animals wear one body their whole lives. These creatures rewrite theirs, second by second. Story 5. There's an entire world on Earth that runs without sunlight, and that alone sounds like something from another planet. Around deep-sea hydrothermal vents, thousands of meters below the ocean's surface, ecosystems thrive in total darkness, using energy that has nothing to do with the sun. No photosynthesis, no plants, no daylight, just chemistry and heat rising from the planet itself. These vents form where seawater seeps into the crust, gets superheated by magma, and shoots back out loaded with minerals and chemicals like hydrogen sulfide. To most surface life, that environment would be lethal: crushing pressure, near-freezing water nearby, toxic compounds, and sudden bursts of extreme heat. Yet life flourishes there. The foundation of the system is bacteria and archaea that use chemosynthesis. Instead of using sunlight like plants do, they extract energy from chemical reactions involving vent compounds. Those microbes become the base of the food web, feeding creatures like giant tube worms, vent shrimp, clams, crabs, and strange fish adapted to the darkness. Giant tube worms are one of the icons of these habitats, growing large without even having a digestive system, relying on symbiotic bacteria inside its body. What makes it feel alien is that it breaks the common assumption that nearly all ecosystems ultimately depend on sunlight. These communities are powered by Earth's internal energy instead. In a sense, they're living off geology. That discovery also changed how scientists think about life elsewhere. If organisms can thrive here in darkness, pressure, and chemical extremes, then places like subsurface oceans on icy moons no longer seem impossible. Hydrothermal vents are a reminder that our planet still contains environments so strange they rewrote biology textbooks. Story 6. Viruses are one of the strangest things in biology because they sit right on the border between chemistry and life. They don't behave like animals, plants, fungi, or bacteria, and even scientists still debate the best way to classify them. Asking whether a virus is alive doesn't have a clean yes or no answer. Outside a host cell, a virus is basically inert. It doesn't eat, grow, move on its own, or generate energy. It can sit on a surface or in the environment as a packaged set of genetic instructions wrapped in protein, sometimes with a lipid coat. In that state, it seems more like a molecular machine than a living organism. But once it enters a suitable host cell, everything changes. It hijacks the cell's machinery to copy its genetic material, build new viral particles, and spread. That ability to replicate and evolve is one of the classic hallmarks of life, which is why viruses are so hard to categorize. They're inactive alone, active only through other life. They're also not trying to kill the host in any conscious sense. Evolution simply favors variants that spread efficiently. Sometimes harming the host is a side effect, sometimes a severe one, and sometimes viruses barely harm hosts at all. In many cases, the immune response causes much of the damage. What makes viruses feel alien is that they challenge our categories. We like neat boxes, alive or not alive, organism or object. Viruses ignore that. They're replicators that exist at the edge of biology. And they're incredibly successful. They infect every domain of life, shape ecosystems, influence evolution, and may even have contributed genes to the history of complex organisms. Weird, tiny, and massively important. Story 7. I did geology at uni, and honestly that kind of lecture sticks with people because Panspermia sounds like science fiction, until you realize parts of it are taken seriously enough to study. The basic idea of Panspermia is not aliens seeded Earth on purpose, but that the building blocks of life, or even simple microbes, could potentially travel between worlds on rocks blasted into space by impacts. And we do know that some meteorites found on Earth came from Mars. Large impacts can eject Martian rock into space, and after long journeys, a few pieces eventually land here. That part isn't speculative. It's supported by chemical and isotopic signatures that match Martian material. The famous controversy usually points to the meteorite ALH84001, discovered in Antarctica. In the 1990s, researchers announced that certain tiny structures and chemical traces inside it might represent fossilized microbial life from Mars. The claim caused huge excitement because, if true, it would be historic. But the debate never settled cleanly in favor of biology. Many scientists argued those shapes could be produced by non-living geological processes, and that the chemical signals weren't definitive evidence of fossils. So, today it's generally treated as intriguing, but unproven rather than confirmed Martian life. What makes the whole topic feel alien is that it blurs geology, biology, and astronomy. A rock can become a potential messenger from another planet. Even if those specific meteorites don't contain fossils, the bigger question remains alive. If microbes can survive extreme conditions, could life hitchhike through space naturally? That possibility alone changes how we think about life in the universe. Story 8. Extremophiles are the kind of organisms that make you realize life is far less fragile and far stranger than most people assume. These are organisms that don't just survive harsh environments, they actively thrive in places where common sense says nothing should live at all. Boiling hot springs, acidic lakes, deep underground rock, radioactive waste, Antarctic ice, hypersaline pools, and deep sea vents under crushing pressure all host forms of life adapted to conditions that would kill most familiar organisms quickly. Many extremophiles belong to Archaea, a domain of life separate from bacteria and eukaryotes. That alone makes them feel alien, because they're not just unusual animals or plants with good survival skills. Many are part of a lineage with fundamentally different biochemistry and evolutionary history. Their cell membranes, enzymes, and metabolic pathways can differ significantly from the life people usually picture. What's especially wild is that they often depend on chemistry that seems hostile to us. Some use sulfur compounds, metals, methane, or hydrogen instead of the energy sources associated with surface ecosystems. Others remain active at temperatures near or above the boiling point of water under pressure. Some can dry out, freeze, or endure intense radiation and still recover. They force scientists to rethink what habitable means. Conditions once dismissed as sterile are now investigated as possible ecosystems. That shift has huge implications for astrobiology, because if life can flourish in Earth's most brutal niches, then worlds like Europa or Enceladus become much more interesting. What makes extremophiles feel so alien isn't just where they live, it's that they expose how narrow our normal definition of life really was. Earth was hiding alternate lifestyles the whole time. Story 9, you don't need to be a scientist to pick the platypus, because honestly it sounds like someone invented it as a prank. When European naturalists first examined one, some thought it was fake, like multiple animals stitched together. And you can see why. Platypus has the bill of a duck, the tail of a beaver, webbed feet like an otter, fur, lays eggs, and then feeds its young with milk. It looks less like one species and more like leftovers from several others. What makes it even stranger is that it's a mammal, but not the kind most people think of. Platypuses are monotremes, an ancient branch of mammals that lay eggs instead of giving live birth. So you've got a furry, warm-blooded, milk-producing animal that reproduces more like a reptile or bird. That alone would make it weird enough. Then the details keep piling up. Males have venomous spurs on their hind legs, capable of delivering a painful sting. Their bill isn't just for show. It contains electroreceptors that detect tiny electrical signals produced by prey in the water. They often hunt with eyes, ears, and nostrils closed, navigating by sensing electrical activity. That feels more like shark technology than mammal biology. Genetically, they're strange too, carrying traits that overlap with mammals, reptiles, and birds, while still being fully their own thing. Evolutionarily, they're a reminder that life doesn't move in neat straight lines. What makes the platypus feel alien is that it violates expectations at every step. Just when you think you understand what kind of animal it is, it adds another impossible feature. Story 10. Meteorites are strange in a way that's easy to overlook because they can look like ordinary rocks, but some of them are literally older than Earth and came from places humans have never touched. You can pick one up in your hand and be holding material formed in the earliest days of the solar system. That alone is pretty alien. A meteorite is a fragment of rock or metal that survives passage through the atmosphere and lands on Earth. Some come from asteroids shattered by collisions. Others have been identified as pieces of the Moon or Mars, blasted into space by impacts and eventually falling here. That means Earth occasionally gets mail from other worlds. The oldest primitive meteorites, especially chondrites, contain grains and minerals that formed before planets fully existed. They preserve chemistry from the birth of the solar system, around 4.56 billion years ago. In some cases, they contain organic molecules like amino acids, the kinds of compounds associated with life's chemistry. Not life itself, but ingredients that show complex chemistry can happen in space naturally. Iron meteorites are even weirder. Many are thought to be fragments of the metallic cores of ancient protoplanets that were broken apart long ago. So, a polished iron meteorite may actually be exposed planetary core material from a destroyed world. What makes meteorites feel alien is that they collapse distance and time. They arrive from beyond Earth carrying records older than any terrestrial rock, and clues from environments we can't easily visit. They're not just rocks that fell from the sky. They're surviving pieces of lost worlds and the earliest history of everything around us. Story 11. They survive the vacuum of space, intense radiation, boiling heat, freezing cold, and can basically shut down their bodies for years or even decades before coming back like nothing happened. If that doesn't sound alien, not much does. You're almost certainly talking about tardigrades. Tardigrades, often called water bears, are microscopic animals with 8 stubby legs and a look that's somehow both cute and unsettling. Under normal conditions, they live in thin films of water, moss, soil, and similar environments. But when things become hostile, they can enter a survival state called cryptobiosis. In that state, they lose most of their body water, slow metabolism to nearly undetectable levels, curl into a dried ton, and wait. That's where the crazy part starts. In this suspended condition, some species can tolerate extreme dehydration, freezing temperatures, high heat for limited periods, crushing pressure, low pressure approaching vacuum, and radiation doses that would be devastating to most life. They're not indestructible, but their resilience is extraordinary. Some have even survived exposure experiments in space when shielded from the harshest factors for limited times. How? They use protective proteins, DNA repair mechanisms, antioxidant systems, and cellular stabilization strategies that help prevent catastrophic damage during stress and rehydration. Instead of resisting every extreme directly, they often endure by pausing life until conditions improve. What makes tardigrades feel alien is that they break the intuitive rules people have about animals. Animals are supposed to be delicate compared with microbes. Tardigrades ignored that memo. They're a reminder that evolution can produce survival strategies so extreme they sound fictional, all hidden in a creature smaller than a grain of sand. Story 12. Slime mold sounds like something from a sci-fi movie, but it's a real organism that keeps embarrassing our assumptions about intelligence. Despite having no brain, no nervous system, and no centralized control, slime mold can solve problems that look eerily strategic. One of the most famous examples is pathway optimization. When placed in a maze or spread across a surface with food sources, slime mold grows outward in many directions, then gradually retracts inefficient routes and reinforces the best ones. The final network often resembles optimized transport systems, balancing efficiency with resilience. Researchers have even compared its growth patterns to railway networks and infrastructure planning. What makes it even stranger is memory. Slime molds can remember repeated environmental conditions without neurons. For example, if exposed to a harmless but unpleasant stimulus at regular intervals, they can begin anticipating it and changing behavior in advance. That means some form of stored information exists in a body made of flowing cells and chemicals rather than synapses. Then it gets weirder. They can transfer learned behavior. When one slime mold fuses temporarily with another, information can pass between them. After separating, the previously inexperienced individual may respond differently, as if it inherited experience. Not language, not teaching in the human sense, but biological information transfer through contact. That feels alien because we tend to think memory requires a brain and learning requires neurons. Slime mold shows that problem-solving and information storage can emerge through completely different mechanisms. It's a reminder that intelligence may not be one thing at all. What we call thinking might just be one version of a broader phenomenon nature can build in multiple ways. A yellow blob of goo quietly planning better routes and sharing experience should unsettle more people than it does. Story 13. Deep-sea creatures feel alien because they evolved in a world so different from ours that the normal rules seem to break down. No sunlight, crushing pressure, near-freezing temperatures, and vast emptiness create animals that look less like familiar Earth life and more like something imagined for another planet. Transparent bodies, oversized eyes, bioluminescent organs, needle teeth, dangling lures, and bizarre shapes are all common down there, because survival demands strange solutions. One of the icons of that world is the giant squid. For centuries, it was closer to legend than confirmed reality, feeding stories of sea monsters and ships dragged beneath the waves. Even today, it still carries that aura because seeing one alive in its natural habitat is rare and difficult. It spends its life in darkness, far below where humans naturally belong. Its scale alone is impressive. Giant squid can reach remarkable lengths, with long feeding tentacles, powerful arms lined with suckers, and a sharp beak capable of tearing prey. Their eyes are among the largest in the animal kingdom, likely an adaptation for detecting faint light or movement in the deep ocean. Imagine needing eyes the size of dinner plates just to survive in darkness. Then there's movement. Squid propel themselves by jetting water, changing direction quickly in a way that feels mechanical and fluid at the same time. Add shifting skin patterns and intelligent cephalopod behavior, and they become even stranger. What makes deep sea life feel alien isn't just appearance, it's context. These creatures evolved in an environment humans can barely visit, under conditions that would kill us instantly. The giant squid is a reminder that Earth still contains realms where monsters became real through evolution. Story 14, the Baltic Sea anomaly, is one of those discoveries that instantly went viral because it looked like something out of science fiction. In 2011, a Swedish exploration team using side-scan sonar found an unusual object resting on the floor of the Baltic Sea. The sonar image appeared circular, raised, and strangely symmetrical, which immediately triggered comparisons to a crashed spaceship, secret military device, or some lost ancient structure. And to be fair, the first image did look weird. Human brains are built to recognize patterns, especially familiar shapes. So, when people saw a round object with lines and edges and grainy sonar data, imagination took over fast. It became one of those internet mysteries where the picture was more powerful than the evidence. But when geologists and marine scientists looked at it more carefully, the likely explanation became much less dramatic. The Baltic Sea floor was heavily shaped by glaciers during the last ice age, and the region is full of unusual rock formations, ridges, and debris. Many experts think the anomaly is a natural geological formation, possibly glacially transported rock, with fractured surfaces and surrounding sediment patterns that happen to look artificial in sonar scans. That doesn't make it boring, though. Natural processes often create shapes that seem designed. Basalt columns, crystal formations, and strange seabed structures regularly fool people because nature can produce geometry without intention. What makes the Baltic Sea anomaly feel alien is less the object itself and more the combination of deep water, blurry technology, and our tendency to see meaning in incomplete data. So, it's probably not a UFO parked underwater, but it is a perfect example of how mysterious Earth can look before science gets a closer look. Story 15. Glaucus atlanticus, also called the blue dragon sea slug, already looks unreal at its normal size. It's a small ocean creature that floats upside down at the surface, with silver blue coloring and branching limbs that make it look more like a fantasy creature than something living in Earth's oceans. If you enlarged it 100 times and had it wandering around, it would absolutely look like an alien life form. What makes it so strange is the body design. Instead of the smooth snail-like shape people expect from a sea slug, it has multiple finger-like serrata extending outward in symmetrical clusters. Those appendages increase surface area, help with buoyancy, and store one of its wildest features, stolen weapons. Glaucus feeds on venomous prey like the Portuguese man-o'-war and other siphonophores. Instead of being killed by the stinging cells, it can store and concentrate those stingers in its own tissues, then use them for defense. So, it's a tiny creature that eats dangerous organisms and repurposes their venom as armor. That alone sounds extraterrestrial. As for the eyes, it does have sensory structures and simple eyes, but they're small and not obvious, which adds to the uncanny appearance. It doesn't have the kind of visible face most animals use to seem familiar to us, so it feels more like a living shape than a recognizable creature. Its coloration also uses countershading in reverse because it floats upside down, blue side down toward the water, silver side up toward the sky. Even its camouflage is weird. What makes Glaucus feel alien is that every part of it seems backwards, borrowed, or stylized. Nature made a tiny floating dragon and hid it in plain sight. Story 16. Lamprey looks like something that slipped through a crack in evolutionary time and never got updated. Long, eel-like, jawless, and equipped with a circular mouth lined with rows of teeth, they trigger an immediate that should not exist reaction in a lot of people. If you saw one enlarged in a dark river or ocean trench, it would feel more like a movie monster than a fish. What makes them especially alien is that they belong to an ancient lineage of vertebrates that split off long before jaws evolved in most fish. So, while sharks, salmon, and humans all come from lineages with jaws and more familiar body plans, lampreys represent a much older branch of backboned animals. They're like a surviving glimpse of a radically different version of vertebrate history. Their mouth is the feature everyone remembers. Instead of biting with jaws, many species use a suction disc mouth packed with keratinized teeth and a rasping tongue to latch onto other fish and feed on blood or body fluids. It's efficient, unsettling, and unlike the feeding method most people associate with vertebrates. They also have multiple gill openings visible along the sides, simple eyes, and a body built more for undulating movement than fins and maneuverability. Everything about them feels stripped down and ancient. Not all lampreys are parasitic, though. Some species don't feed as adults at all and exist mainly to reproduce before dying. Others spend part of their life buried in sediment as filter-feeding larvae that look nothing like the adults. Their life cycle is strange enough on its own. What makes lampreys feel alien is that they remind us evolution didn't move in a straight line toward familiar creatures. Some branches kept going in directions that now look almost impossible to modern eyes. Story 17. Cimothoa exigua, commonly called the tongue-eating louse, sounds less like a real organism and more like something invented to make people uncomfortable. It's a parasitic crustacean that enters a fish through the gills, attaches itself to the fish's tongue, and feeds on the blood supply until the tongue withers away and dies. Then it does the part that feels truly alien. It physically replaces the missing tongue and remains inside the fish's mouth as a functioning substitute. So, the fish keeps living, eating, and using the parasite where its own tongue used to be. That's what makes this creature so disturbing. It doesn't just harm a host or drain nutrients. It integrates itself into the host's anatomy like a biological replacement part. Nature doesn't usually make things that feel this surgically specific. It belongs to a group of parasitic isopods, relatives of pillbugs and other crustaceans, but its lifestyle is on another level. The young parasite typically enters through the gills, matures inside the mouth, and anchors itself securely. Once established, it can remain there while the fish continues normal life. Interestingly, it doesn't usually kill the host outright. Like many successful parasites, it benefits more from keeping the host alive than destroying it quickly. That practical balance somehow makes it even creepier. It's not chaotic destruction, it's efficient occupation. To humans, it feels alien because it violates intuitive boundaries. We expect parasites to live on or in an organism, not to replace one of its organs and become part of the system. If this had first been discovered on another planet, people would call it nightmare fuel and assume science fiction had gone too far. Story 18. Superb bird of paradise becomes one of the strangest things on Earth the moment it starts its mating display. Normally, it looks like a small black bird from the forests of New Guinea. Then, when it wants to impress a female, it transforms into something that barely looks biological anymore. The male spreads specialized feathers into a perfectly controlled shape, flattening and widening its body until it resembles a floating oval or animated mask. Hidden iridescent blue feathers flare into an intense neon-like ring and chest patch. while the rest of the body absorbs light so deeply it appears almost two-dimensional. Then it starts bouncing, pivoting, and moving in sharp, rhythmic motions around the female. It doesn't look like ordinary courtship behavior. It looks like a living optical illusion or a cartoon sprite rendered inside a rainforest. If someone showed footage without context, plenty of people would assume CGI. Part of the uncanny effect comes from structural color. The bright blue isn't pigment in the normal sense. It's created by microscopic feather structures manipulating light. Meanwhile, the black feathers are so specialized they absorb huge amounts of incoming light, making edges disappear and enhancing the glowing blue contrast. Nature engineered display materials that resemble advanced visual design. And all of this exists for one purpose: selection. Over generations, females preferred more dramatic displays, and evolution kept escalating the performance until it became absurdly elaborate. No survival necessity, no practical utility beyond reproduction, just aesthetic competition pushed to extremes. What makes the superb bird of paradise feel alien is that it reveals nature can produce behavior that looks intentional, theatrical, and almost technological. It's a bird turning itself into a shape-shifting hologram because romance demanded it. Story 19. Promachoteuthis sulcus is one of those deep-sea creatures that instantly feels wrong the moment you see it. It's a rarely observed squid known from only a handful of specimens, and what made it famous is a close-up image showing what appears to be a ring of human-like teeth inside its mouth. That photo alone was enough to make people think Earth is hiding aliens in the ocean. Technically, those aren't true teeth like mammals have. Squid and other cephalopods normally possess a hard beak used for biting and tearing prey, plus a rasping tongue-like structure called a radula lined with tiny tooth-like elements. In this species, the arrangement and appearance of those structures create an unnervingly familiar dentures look. Our brains are extremely sensitive to faces and mouths, so when we see orderly white projections inside a circular opening, it feels deeply uncanny. Then add the context. It lives in the deep ocean, one of the least explored environments on Earth. Darkness, pressure, and isolation already prime people to expect monsters. A rare squid with apparent teeth emerging from that environment practically writes its own legend. Very little is known about its everyday life compared with common coastal species. Like many deep-sea animals, it's mostly studied from collected specimens, rather than repeated observations in nature. That mystery amplifies the alien vibe. What makes Promachoteuthis sulcus feel so strange isn't just anatomy, it's the collision of something familiar and something impossible. Teeth belong in mammals. Tentacled deep-sea squid belong in another category entirely. Seeing both in one creature short-circuits intuition. It's a reminder that sometimes nature doesn't need to invent something impossible to disturb us. It only needs to rearrange the familiar in the wrong place. Story 20. Coconut crab looks like what would happen if evolution decided to upscale a normal crab until it became mildly terrifying. It's the largest land-living arthropod on Earth, capable of reaching impressive sizes, with long legs, heavy armor-like exoskeleton, and claws powerful enough to crush hard objects. If you saw one unexpectedly at night on a remote island, it would absolutely feel like an alien encounter. What makes it so strange is that it's a crab that largely abandoned the ocean. Unlike the beach crabs people are used to seeing, coconut crabs live mostly on land across islands in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. They climb, roam forests, dig burrows, and navigate terrain in a way that feels more like some giant terrestrial insect than a crustacean. Then there are the claws. Their grip strength is famous because it's genuinely formidable for an invertebrate. They use them to tear open food, defend themselves, climb, and manipulate objects. The name comes from their reputation for cracking coconuts, though they often exploit already weakened husks or use persistence rather than instantly snapping one open. Either way, the idea of a giant land crab opening coconuts with brute force is already surreal. They also have a weird blend of biology, crustacean ancestry, hermit crab relatives, but adapted lungs-like structures for breathing air as adults. Young ones still begin life tied to the sea before transitioning onto land. What makes coconut crabs feel alien is scale plus context. People are used to arthropods being small. When one becomes large, strong, armored, and fully terrestrial, it crosses into monster territory fast. It's basically a giant mobile claw system wearing a shell, casually walking through palm forests like it owns the island. Story 21. Pygmy jerboa looks less like a normal mammal and more like a tiny prototype built by nature. It's an incredibly small desert rodent with oversized ears, huge eyes, long hind legs, and a body so tiny that it almost seems animated rather than real. The proportions are what make it feel alien. Everything looks exaggerated in the wrong direction. Its hind legs are especially bizarre. Instead of moving like a typical mouse, the pygmy jerboa hops using elongated back limbs, almost like a microscopic kangaroo. That gives it a strange, spring-loaded movement, where it can bound across sand in sudden jumps. Watching one move at speed feels like seeing a creature running on entirely different physics. Then there's the tail, often longer than the body, used for balance and steering while hopping. Combined with the oversized head and delicate limbs, it creates a silhouette that barely resembles the standard mammal template people are used to. It's like evolution mixed a mouse, a rabbit, and a toy drone together. Those huge ears aren't just for appearance either. In hot desert environments, large ears can help with heat regulation and detecting predators or movement. The big eyes are useful for nocturnal life, since many jerboas are active at night when temperatures are lower. So, the strange look comes from practical adaptations pushed to extremes. What makes the pygmy jerboa feel so alien is contrast. Mammals are usually familiar to us, but this one takes a recognizable category and stretches every feature into something uncanny. It's still a rodent, technically, yet it looks like a tiny extraterrestrial trying to pass as one. If someone told you it was discovered hopping across the surface of Mars, most people would believe it immediately. Story 22. Bobbit worm is the kind of creature that makes people uncomfortable because it feels designed to ambush rather than simply exist. Hidden beneath sand or rubble on the seafloor, it leaves only part of its body exposed and waits. Then, when prey gets close enough, it can lunge out with startling speed, grab the target with sharp jaws, and drag it underground. The strike is so sudden that fish can appear to vanish in a split second. These worms belong to a group of marine segmented worms called unicids, and some individuals can grow to impressive lengths, with reports of several feet and occasionally much larger specimens. When most of the body is buried and only the head is visible, the true size becomes hard to appreciate, which adds to the horror factor. You may be looking at a few inches above sand, while feet of animals remain hidden below. The bristles along the body are another reason they feel alien. Those structures can irritate skin and help with traction and movement through sediment. In some marine worms, contact can cause stinging or discomfort, which likely contributes to stories about numbness or paralysis. Like many segmented invertebrates, some related worms can regenerate damaged portions to varying degrees. So, the idea of surviving injury or splitting into viable sections has a real biological basis, even if dramatic claims are often exaggerated. Nature doesn't need the myth to be unsettling. What makes the bobbit worm feel alien is the combination of stealth, speed, hidden scale, and anatomy that seems built for jump scare predation. It's less like a typical worm and more like a trap concealed in the seabed. If one were common on land instead of underwater, people would talk about it the way they talk about movie monsters. Story 23, giant ichneumon wasp looks like something biology accidentally made too dramatic. At first glance, it resembles an oversized wasp with impossibly long antennae, spindly legs, and in females, an absurdly long tail-like structure trailing behind the body. A lot of people assume that tail is a stinger, which immediately makes the insect look terrifying. But the strange reality is even more interesting. That long appendage is usually an ovipositor, a specialized egg-laying tool. Some giant ichneumon wasps use it like a living drill to place eggs into wood where hidden larvae of other insects are feeding. They can detect vibrations or chemical cues from prey concealed deep inside tree trunks, then carefully insert the ovipositor through bark to reach them. It's an insect locating something invisible inside solid wood and threading a biological instrument into it with precision. That feels almost engineered. The young then develop as parasitids, meaning they grow by feeding on or within the host. Unlike simple parasites, parasitoids typically kill the host by the end of development. It's a life cycle that sounds brutal to human ears, but is extremely common and successful in nature. What makes them feel alien is how specialized everything is. The sensory systems, the elongated body plan, the drilling organ, and the reproductive strategy all seem optimized for a niche most people never think about: hunting hidden larvae inside timber. They're also usually far less dangerous to humans than they look. Many species can't sting people in any meaningful way, despite the intimidating appearance. The horror is mostly aesthetic. The giant ichneumon wasp is a reminder that nature often creates creatures that seem monstrous only because they evolved for problems completely unrelated to us. We just happen to be unnerved by how efficient the solution looks. Story 24. Praying mantises have that rare quality where the longer you stare at them, the stranger they become. At first, they just look like unusual insects. Then you start noticing the details, and suddenly they seem less like bugs and more like tiny biomechanical predators. The head is a big part of it. Mantises can rotate their heads far more than most insects, giving them an alert, almost vertebrate-like way of looking around. Instead of seeming mindless or automatic, they appear to watch you. Their large compound eyes add to that feeling, especially with the dark pseudo-pupil effect that makes it seem like the eyes are tracking your movement from different angles. Then there are the forelegs. Those folded praying arms are actually raptorial limbs lined with spines, built to snap outward and seize prey with shocking speed. It's the posture of patience hiding the mechanics of a trap. They can stay perfectly still like a leaf or twig, then strike in milliseconds. Their body plan also feels oddly deliberate. Long thorax, triangular head, articulated limbs, camouflage that can resemble bark, flowers, or dead leaves. Some species sway gently, as if imitating vegetation in the wind. Others have threat displays with hidden colors or eye spots that suddenly appear when disturbed. Behavior makes them even stranger. They can judge distance visually, track moving targets, and in some experiments show surprisingly complex hunting responses for insects. Their reputation for cannibalism, while sometimes exaggerated, only adds to the mythos. What makes mantises feel weird isn't just appearance, it's that they project intention. Many insects seem automatic. Mantises seem calculating. The more you look at one, the less it feels like a simple bug, and the more it feels like a miniature predator wearing an insect shell. Story 25, Stoplight loosejaw. Sounds like a made-up monster name, and then you see the fish and realize the name somehow undersells it. This deep-sea predator belongs to a group called dragonfishes, and nearly everything about it feels designed for a world humans were never meant to enter. Long, sharp, needle-toothed, and built for total darkness, it looks more like a nightmare adaptation than a normal fish. The loose jaw part comes from its jaw structure. Unlike many fish with rigid, powerful bites, this species has a loosely hinged lower jaw that can open wide and snap quickly at prey. The bones are lightly built, helping reduce weight and perhaps allowing fast strikes in an environment where energy efficiency matters. It gives the face a skeletal, unfinished look that adds to the alien vibe. Then there's the stoplight part, which is where it gets truly bizarre. Most deep-sea bioluminescent animals produce blue or green light because those wavelengths travel best underwater. but the stoplight loosejaw can generate red light from specialized organs beneath the eyes. Since many deep-sea creatures can't see red wavelengths well, that means it may be able to illuminate prey without being noticed, like hunting with an invisible flashlight. Think about that for a second. A fish in permanent darkness evolved covert night vision tactics. That sounds like military technology, not biology. Its body is usually dark or black, helping it disappear, while long teeth help trap soft-bodied prey in the deep. Like many abyssal animals, it looks exaggerated because subtlety often fails where sunlight never reaches. What makes the stoplight loosejaw feel alien is that it doesn't just survive the deep sea, it exploits the physics of darkness in ways that seem almost strategic. Nature built a stealth predator with hidden red headlights. Story 26, Anglerfish look like something imagined by people who had never seen sunlight. They're one of the signature creatures of the deep sea, where darkness is permanent, pressure is crushing, and food can be scarce for long stretches. In that environment, normal-looking fish don't always make sense, so evolution produced something that seems almost deliberately monstrous. The most famous feature is the lure. A modified spine extends from the head like a fishing rod, tipped with a glowing organ filled with bioluminescent bacteria or light-producing tissue depending on the species. The fish wiggles this light in the dark to attract curious prey close enough to strike. It's an ambush hunter using living bait in total darkness. That alone feels alien. Then there's the mouth. Many anglerfish have oversized jaws, inward-pointing teeth, and the ability to swallow prey surprisingly large relative to their own body size. In a place where meals are unpredictable, passing up food can be fatal, so if something edible arrives, they often try to eat it. Some species become even stranger when you look at reproduction. In certain deep-sea anglerfish, the tiny male finds a female and permanently fuses to her body, eventually sharing tissues and blood supply, while functioning mainly as a source of sperm. It sounds more like body horror than zoology, but it's a real solution to the problem of finding mates in a vast, empty ocean. Their bodies are often dark, soft, and oddly shaped because streamlined beauty matters less than efficiency in the abyss. What makes anglerfish feel alien is that every part of them is shaped by a world almost opposite to ours. We evolved under sunlight and abundance. They evolved in darkness and scarcity. The result is a creature so strange, it became the face of the unknown ocean. Story 27, Eurypterids, often called sea scorpions, are one of those extinct animals that make you grateful they're gone. They weren't true scorpions, but ancient arthropods related more closely to arachnids, and some species grew to sizes that sound exaggerated until you see the fossils. The largest known forms could exceed human height and length, turning what most people imagine as a creepy, crawly body plan into something genuinely imposing. They lived hundreds of millions of years ago in marine and freshwater environments, long before humans existed, during periods when Earth's ecosystems looked radically different. Back then, arthropods sometimes reached enormous sizes, likely helped by environmental conditions, such as higher oxygen levels in some eras and ecological niches with fewer vertebrate competitors. When you combine that with an already successful armored body plan, you get giant predatory invertebrates. Their fossils show segmented bodies, paddle-like limbs in some species for swimming, grasping appendages, and tails that varied by group. Some were active predators, others may have scavenged or occupied more specialized roles. They weren't all monsters, many were small, but the giant species are what capture the imagination. What makes Eurypterids feel alien is scale plus familiarity. People are used to bugs and crustaceans being manageable because they're small. Once you take an arthropod design, armor, multiple limbs, external skeleton, grasping appendages, and scale it toward human size, it instantly crosses into nightmare territory. They're also a reminder that Earth's past was filled with body plans and giants that modern ecosystems no longer contain. If one of the larger species were alive today, cruising through murky water, it would become a global obsession overnight. Sometimes fossils don't just tell us what existed, they show us how weird normal used to be. Story 28, Blobfish became famous as the ugliest animal in the world, but the weirdest thing about it is that the version people know is basically a pressure-damaged misunderstanding. In its natural environment, deep beneath the ocean surface, it doesn't look like a melted cartoon face at all. It only becomes that famous blob when brought rapidly up from extreme depths. Blobfish live in deep waters off Australia and nearby regions, where pressure is many times greater than at sea level. Down there, bodies are shaped and supported by conditions humans never experience. Instead of needing strong muscles and rigid structures, a fish can get by with softer tissues and low-density flesh that helps it hover near the seafloor with minimal energy use. In a food-poor environment, efficiency matters more than athleticism. When one is hauled to the surface, the pressure change wrecks that balance. Tissues expand, structure collapses, and the fish deforms into the drooping mass seen in photos. So, the blob is less what it is and more what happens when a deep-sea animal is removed from the world it evolved for. That alone makes it feel alien. Imagine judging a desert animal only after dropping it into the deep ocean. Context matters. Many deep-sea creatures look bizarre to us because their bodies are designed for a completely different physical reality. Blobfish belong to a group called fatheads or psychroludids, and in their own habitat they're just another specialized bottom-dwelling fish, not some joke creature. What makes blobfish strange isn't ugliness, it's that they reveal how life can be perfectly normal in one environment and grotesquely distorted in another. Earth contains places so extreme that their native animals only make sense under the right physics. Story 29, Axolotl looks like something designed in a lab to be cute and biologically impossible at the same time. With feathery external gills, a permanent smile-like face, smooth skin, and tiny limbs, they don't resemble the standard amphibian life cycle most people expect. That's because the weirdest thing about them is they largely never grow up in the usual sense. Most salamanders begin life as aquatic larvae, then metamorphose into land-dwelling adults. Axolotls famously retain many juvenile traits into adulthood, a phenomenon called neoteny. They stay aquatic, keep their larval gills, and become mature without completing the dramatic transformations seen in close relatives. It's like hitting adulthood while keeping the starter form. Then there's the regeneration. Axolotls can regrow lost limbs, tails, parts of the spinal cord, skin, and even portions of organs such as the heart. Not just scar over damage, but rebuild complex structures with nerves, muscle, bone, and function. That ability makes them scientifically valuable because researchers hope understanding their biology could eventually inform regenerative medicine. Their habitat history adds another layer. Native originally to lakes around Mexico City, especially remnants of Lake Xochimilco, they're now critically endangered in the wild, while being common in labs and captivity around the world. A creature that is globally famous, yet struggling in its natural home, feels strange in its own right. What makes axolotls feel alien is that they violate assumptions. They keep baby features, regenerate body parts, breathe through external gill plumes, and live as adults in a developmental state that seems unfinished to us. They're a reminder that evolution doesn't care what looks normal. Sometimes it produces an organism that seems to exist halfway between larva, adult, and science fiction. Story 30. Tarantula hawk sounds like two unrelated animals mashed into one name, and somehow the real creature is even stranger than that suggests. It's a large spider wasp, famous for hunting tarantulas, overpowering them, and using them as living nurseries for its young. If nature were trying to invent a villain, this would be a strong draft. Despite the dramatic name, it isn't a hawk at all. It's a wasp, often metallic blue-black with vivid orange wings, built for speed, strength, and intimidation. The female searches for burrows or actively provokes tarantulas into combat. Once she gets the chance, she delivers a precise sting that can paralyze the spider without killing it. That part is key. A dead spider would rot. A living but immobilized one stays fresh. She then drags or leads the much larger tarantula to a burrow, lays a single egg on it, and seals the chamber. When the larva hatches, it feeds on the still living host in a sequence that preserves vital organs until late in development. Efficient from an evolutionary standpoint, horrifying from ours. The sting of the tarantula hawk is also infamous among humans, often described as extremely painful though brief. Many predators learn to leave these wasps alone, helped by their bright warning colors. What makes them feel alien is the level of specialization. This isn't a generalist insect grabbing random prey. It evolved a lifestyle centered around locating, subduing, and provisioning giant spiders with surgical precision. It's one of those reminders that nature doesn't operate on human ideas of mercy or drama. It simply refines strategies that work, even when the result sounds like something dreamed up for a horror documentary. Story 31. Tarsiers look like tiny primates designed after someone only vaguely understood mammals. At first glance, they're almost cute, but the longer you look, the stranger they become. Enormous eyes, spindly fingers, oversized ears, and a body built for explosive movement give them an uncanny, almost animated appearance. The eyes are what people notice first. Relative to body size, tarsiers have some of the largest eyes of any mammal. Each eyeball is so large, it's roughly comparable in size to its brain. Unlike many animals, their eyes can't rotate in the sockets, so instead they compensate by turning their heads dramatically, up to around 180 degrees in either direction. That owl-like head movement on a primate body feels instantly weird. They're also specialized hunters. While many primates eat fruit or leaves, tarsiers are largely carnivorous, feeding on insects, small vertebrates, and other prey. They sit silently, track movement with those huge eyes and sensitive hearing, then launch themselves in sudden leaps using elongated ankle bones, the tarsal bones that gave them their name. Watching one move is like seeing a spring-loaded ghost jump between branches. Their fingers and toes are adapted for gripping, and some digits have grooming claws rather than nails. Another detail that makes them feel halfway between categories. They're primates, but not in the familiar monkey or ape way people expect. What makes tarsiers feel alien is the combination of near-human lineage with deeply unfamiliar proportions. We recognize just enough primate features to relate to them, then everything else pushes into uncanny territory. They're a reminder that even within our own broader evolutionary family, nature can produce forms that look like they came from another world hiding in the trees. Story 32. Nautilus feels less like a modern animal and more like something that never got the memo that entire eras had passed. It's a living cephalopod, related to octopuses and squid, but unlike its soft-bodied cousins, it still carries an external coiled shell that looks like a perfect mathematical artifact. Seeing one drift through dark water feels like watching a fossil come to life. What makes the nautilus so strange is that the shell isn't just protection, it's an engineering system. Inside are multiple sealed chambers. As the animal grows, it creates new ones and can regulate gases and fluids within them to help control buoyancy. It's essentially carrying a natural submarine flotation device built from biology. Then there's the face. Instead of the 8 arms of an octopus or 10 appendages of many squid, nautiluses have dozens of slender tentacles without suckers. They use them to feel, grasp, and explore in a way that looks more like a writhing sensory crown than normal limbs. Combined with relatively simple pinhole-style eyes, they appear ancient in design, yet still effective. They also represent deep time,